entire economic modernisation of this country, the groundwork for it was done by John Bruton's government, so I'm delighted that he's going to speak here tonight. And Deputy Eoghan Murphy, who you all know, no doubt, Michael will have an introduction for him, but he's been a fantastic deputy for this area, fantastic TD, and he brings a huge amount of energy and intelligence to bear on everything. So I'm delighted to have them both here. And the third person, the chairman, I don't have much to say about him. He'll no doubt. His name's Michael, for anybody wondering. He comes from a very disreputable family. We've allowed him here tonight. He likes a little ego trip every now and again. So tonight, the meeting is about better politics, better city. And the reason I picked this is because I think that sometimes in local elections we can be talking about the potholes and we can be talking about other things, but we forget that this is serious politics, and the decisions that people will make in this election will have huge effects on the city. So I'm knocking on doors at the moment, and I do get people of all generations saying, oh, I'm not really into politics. And that's not just young people. I was down in Ringsend lately, I had a big, I was going to say a fight. I had an argument with a lady who was, she was long retired, but we had a fairly lengthy argument. It turned out that she not only is going to vote Fianna Fáil in the next election, but had voted for Fianna Fáil all her life. So by the end of the argument, she was blaming me for the fact that cuts had been made in the last few years. So by the end of the argument, I actually just turned to her and said, well, you're the one who voted for Fianna Fáil, I blame you for what happened, which I mightn't have won the vote, but I won the argument. Politics is more important. But I do think when people say, I'm not that into politics, you have to make it really clear to them that it doesn't matter if they're not into politics. Politics is into them. Politics is making decisions about everybody's lives on a daily basis, and it's decisions that are made by politicians which control our lives. And therefore, I think we have to bring it home to people that how you approach politics is going to have a huge effect on the quality of life in this city. So, I'm not from Dublin, and so better politics, I say better city. I'm not from Dublin. As Michael said, I have lived all around the world. I lived in Canada, I lived in Cuba, I spent quite a bit of time in South America, I lived in Buenos Aires for a short while. But since I came to college in Dublin in 1995, I've called Dublin home. And so therefore it was a huge honour to become a councillor for this city. And it's a city that I now think of as, it's the city that I'm going to live in for the rest of my life, and it's the city that I'm very proud to serve. So what I propose to do tonight is talk a little bit about what the council does for the city, what it's doing well, what it's doing badly. I might talk about a few then afterwards, a few very specific things about how we were going to change, or we are changing politics to do with the property tax, how services are delivered, and I'll briefly mention Irish Water, and I'll finish up by talking about how we can do things better. The Mercer 2014 report, it's the quality of living rankings that they do every year for cities, ranked Dublin 34th out of 223, so 34th out of 223 cities. So we are doing a lot of things right. The reason they ranked it ahead of London and ahead of Tokyo were because of the educational facilities, the recreational activities available, and the social activities in the city. And in politics we often like to talk about what we're doing wrong, but we should actually accept, and this is why I use the word better, we should accept that we're actually doing quite a few things right at the moment in the city. But of course there is always room for improvement. So the local issues that I'm going to look at there's a range of them, from dereliction to planning to parking. And I'm going to have a brief word about each of them and what we're doing. I'm going to start with dereliction, because it's something as you're walking around the city, you see these empty buildings. You see empty buildings in the urban villages and in the city centre. And they're there as a result of the economic collapse. They're a symptom of what's gone wrong, but they've also become a cause, because they attract antisocial behaviour, they attract other dereliction, and it is a huge civic issue at the moment, and something that I am fighting on two fronts. And the two fronts we fight on, one is through the planning regime, and the other one is through the Derelict Sites Act. The planning regime is looking forward. We have to think, what are we going to do with these sites? So in the last 2 years, the Dublin City Councillors, and this is the councillors rather than the officials, have the power to bring in development plans for the city and subsets of development plans. We brought in a George's Quay local area plan, which is to rezone a lot of the area between O'Connell and the City Quay. And we did it in such a way, when you're doing this, you get pressure from both sides. You get pressure from local residents who don't want tall buildings going in or want recreational facilities. You get pressure from the owners of the land, whether they be NAMA or the banks or receivers or even developers still out there that want higher buildings and denser buildings. And as councillors, we then make decisions that will see these areas developed. And I think we did it with the Georges Quay Local Area Plan, and you will see there's a lot of derelict sites there that you will see building on in the next year or so. And we did a similar thing, which will have an even bigger effect in the Docklands area. We brought in a new Docklands SDZ, which is a strategic development zone, which will allow, when it passes in a couple of months' time, it will allow the DDDA pretty much be abolished. And the DDDA is something that needs to go. And we will have a planning regime controlled by the council for that area. And again, we were making these decisions that we'll see a lot of what we call these brownfield sites, these derelict sites that you see graffiti on the side of, and it will allow those to develop. But that's the long-term vision. The short-term, we used to use the Derelict Sites Act, which is the legislation that allows the council to intervene if there is a building that's allowed run derelict. And it's not strong enough. This is one thing we find. I have made representations on quite a number of sites around the city, and I will continue to do so. But the problem with it at the moment is that once the person who owns the building does enough work that it's no longer a risk to the health and safety of the surrounding area, so if they board up the windows and do a bit more, they can usually get away with it. So we do need a strengthened Derelict Sites Act, but even with what we have, we can often use it if the owner has any sense of civic pride. We can use it to find out, it gives us a legal power to find out who the owner is and forces them to act. And dereliction isn't just about how the city looks, it's about getting new buildings up, it's about jobs, it's about building in both the inner city area and also out in the urban villages. And there's always a connection, because I have represented for the last 3 years the area from Portobello over to Ringsend. But the focus, or the point I've consistently made is that if we can put reasonable high-rise into the city centre, that is what protects our urban villages. Because you do need to have a compact city. So if you can build up in the city centre, that therefore allows you to protect the lovely semi-detached areas that we have, these urban villages that we have around Dublin 4 and Dublin 6. Another thing I've been working on is cycling, because again, sometimes people portray it as if there's an antagonism or a road war between cyclists, drivers and pedestrians. I don't buy into it. I think that every time you're driving and you see a cyclist, you should think that's one less car on the road and therefore more space for me. Every time, genuinely, this is the way, if we get more people off bikes, that creates more space for you as a driver. If you're a cyclist, maybe that the person who's driving is a cyclist and also a pedestrian. And I say this because I walk to work, I sometimes get the Lewis to work, I use the Dublin bike scheme, I have my own bike and I drive. So I use all 5 on a regular basis, and it's about balance. We've brought in new cycle lanes in the Grand Canal area. There's a new cycle lane that's going to go into the South Quays of the Liffey over the next 6 months. It's something I fought for from this moment I became a councillor, and finally we're going to see the realisation of it in the next 6 months. And we are going to see an extension of the Grand Canal cycleway out from Portobello further out. But separately, we're going to see on-the-spot fines, because this is something that comes up at our policing committees, and it's something we continually say to the Gardaí, is that there are cyclists out there who don't respect the rules. And sometimes it's because the cycle lanes are so bad that they're cycling on footpaths, but often there's no logical reason for it. And the problem is that there's no political will within the Gardaí. So as a councillor, I say to the superintendent on every joint policing committee meeting, this is unacceptable. There are people cycling across footbridges, there are people cycling on footpaths. The answer we get back is, from the Gardaí, is that if you want to do something about it, you have to book the person, bring them down, arrest them, bring them down to the Garda station, charge them, and you should appear in court. This is the only way of addressing it. It would take 2 days out of the Garda's routine, and their resources are slim at the moment. So on-the-spot fines are on the way in. And when on-the-spot fines come in, it means that any cyclist can be stopped, can be fined there and then. There'll be an incentive for the Garda to do it. That political will be there, because then there'll be targets given, no doubt, for the Gardaí to enforce it. And that is something that will have an effect. On a much broader issue, openness and transparency is something that I've been fighting for on the council since I came in, and it's something that I really do believe in, because I think people sometimes have this notion of the council as being somehow in civic offices away from people, but once you become a councillor you realise that you are the conduit between the people and the council, but as much information should be out there. And this is something, talking about the modernisation and the future vision for the council, is that almost everything the council does should be publicly available because people are working for you. So I lobbied, and Eoghan helped me with this and brought it up in the Dáil, for the new Freedom of Information Amendment Act that's going through to include council companies, because the council was previously able to set up a company, have councillors or council officials on it, and the actions of that company would be exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. And that's something that Brendan Howland has taken on board, and it has been addressed in the new Freedom of Information Act. And so Temple Bar Cultural Trust, which has been wound up, in which, as some of you know, I fought for corporate governance in there, and I led the winding up of it in an orderly manner, when it wasn't always a popular thing to do, but it was something that had to be done for the public finances, but also for the Hugh Lane Gallery, in which I'm on the board. And one of the things I have done on both those boards is bring a very strong ethos of corporate governance. My campaign manager, on another point, and this is going on to the next point, has told me I can't talk about Doctor. I know it's not glamorous, but it's actually something that comes up on the doorsteps all the time. It's dangerous, it's unhealthy, it's unsanitary, and it is something that I have been fighting since I got in on 3 different fronts. I mean, it's a danger to children, and yet there are a certain segment of the population who seem to think they have a right to open the door and let their dog out and let us do its business anywhere. And we need to fight it on 3 fronts. We need to fight it on the front of education, so that everybody realises it is socially unacceptable to allow your dog to do its dirt in a public thoroughfare without cleaning up after it. We have to fight it in the sense of cleaning, and I secured 2 new machines. I don't know if you've heard of these. They're hoovering cleaning machines, and I secured funding for those. So there's 2 of them operating in the southeast area now, in Ringsend, Sandymount, and there's a separate one over in Rathmines, in order to clean the pavements specifically for this. And then the third front is in enforcement. And we need to find people. We need people to realise that they will face criminal sanction if they allow their dogs to do this. I've realised that there might be some leeway for a former Taoiseach for how long to speak, but I better not go on. So what I might do is, I was going to talk about flooding, but I won't except for to say that there's great work going on for both the Liffey and for the dollar at the moment, and the OPW deal with the insurance, the Irish Insurance Federation. If you want to know about it, it's really good news for people who live within the dollar area. And what I might finish up by talking about, rather than talking about parking and waste, which I was going to, is I am going to talk about property tax. Because property tax is something that has been brought in. It is a major change in how Irish people pay taxation, but it's also bringing about major changes in local government. And I'm going to make 2 really important points, I believe, about property tax. The first is that very soon that tax is going to pay for local services. And I think this will bring about a huge change in how Irish people think about their local council. The second point I'll make is the need for that tax to be controlled and to be reduced. So, on the first point, the Finance Local Property Tax Act of 2012, under it, the Minister of Finance pays into the local government fund the equivalent of whatever is collected in property tax around the country. And that's what the legislation provides. But this government has committed that instead of just paying the amount collectively from next year, and it should have been this year, and I'm very disappointed in the government that it didn't happen this year, but from next year, if the local property tax collected by Dublin City Council will be retained by Dublin City Council. The local property tax collected by Leitrim will be retained by Leitrim County Council. Within there will be a margin of 80, like within a margin with 20% or so used to distribute because of the funding requirements. And I think this is the first time in the history of the state that we have proper taxation and representation aligning at a local level. And you remember in the, not remember, you will have heard from the American War of Independence, what was it again? No taxation without representation. As of at the moment, we now have taxation without representation, and we have representation without taxation. Next year, the two will align. And I think what's going to happen from that is that people will expect a huge amount more from their council. They will expect more accountability, more openness, but also better delivery of service, and a better delivery of service at a more efficient cost. And that's a good thing. This is not a bad thing. It's actually a very, very good thing. And it's something that I look forward to and something that I hope I am part of the delivery of. But it brings us to the second point, which is that when you can bring in efficiencies of service, that's what allows you to reduce the cost of those services. From next year, councillors will have a power to vary by 15% the rate of local property taxation. And we already have a model of how this might work, because Dublin City Council Dublin City councillors already control one set of taxation, and that's the rateable value, the rates that are paid by commercial premises in the city. And you probably don't know this unless you pay rates, but for the last 5 years, the councillors in Fine Gael and Labour have brought in budgets in which the rateable valuation has dropped, and they've done it for 5 consecutive years in the face of the worst recession this country has ever seen. And this is something I'm very, very proud of from Fine Gael's perspective. It was a cornerstone of our position on Dublin City Council. But it also allows you to see the Fine Gael approach, and we will bring that same approach to the local property tax, because it is something the councillors in their annual budget will have an obligation to decide on. And those rateable valuations that we've brought in for commercial rates, that was in the face of opposition from all of the other parties, and from the independents and the independent socialists and the far left, and all of the other groups opposed this. But we did it, and we did a deal, and we got it through. And what commitment I'm going to give on that is that the local property tax can be reduced by 15% by the councillors. Our aim over the lifetime of the next council is to reduce it, and I'm giving a commitment that if I'm returned and if I'm elected back onto Dublin City Council, that will be my position. 15% reduction over the lifetime of the next council. If I'm a member of the Fine Gael group, I will ensure that the Fine Gael group adopts that position, and then we can bring that position to any budget we're doing a deal on. We mightn't be in a position to control the budget. It might be Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin who have to bring in a budget. But people need to know that the decision they make on the 23rd of May will have a serious repercussion on the level of property tax that they will be paying. So it's reform. It's not cuddly reform. Like, it's serious stuff. We're talking like people's pockets here, and I do think that people sometimes when they think about local government, they don't realise the effect it has. Going back to, I want nothing to do with politics. Politics will be making decisions about people's lives, and I'm hoping people won't vote lightly on the 23rd of May. I'm going to finish up by just briefly mentioning my vision for the city, which is that you look around the city, we've Google, we've Facebook, we've LinkedIn, we've one of the most technologically adept cities in the world, but we haven't seen that at City Council level. We haven't seen the efficiencies that information technology can bring being adopted. We haven't so much believe the gutters section of Dublin City Council is amazing. Every time they deal with a gutter, it's recorded, it generates an automatic Excel sheet, which is then automatically uploaded and then is made available every 2 months. This is the kind of thing, it's such a basic thing, but it means that if you call me up and say, there's a gutter outside my house, I can ask you what number house you are, and I can tell you, actually, that was cleaned 2 months ago. They tried to clean it yesterday, but there was a car blocking it. If you move the car, I'll have it cleaned tomorrow. And that's just really basic technology meeting the needs of local people so that they know that their house won't be flooded in heavy rain. But this is the kind of thing we need to do, and my broader vision is to see that use of technology and that openness adopted so that the basic services that are needed in the urban villages throughout the city can be provided in a cost-efficient manner. And that way we will have better politics and we will have a better city. So I thank you for your patience. I look forward to hearing from our 2 other distinguished guests, and I hope I will have your support on the 23rd of May.